The morning after my daughter's wedding, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I never drank. I just stared at it, watched the steam curl up and disappear, thought about how I'd driven home alone at 10 o'clock while the reception was still going, while the band was still playing, while my daughter was dancing with her new husband and his family, like I wasn't even there. Because for all practical purposes, I wasn't. I'd been seated at table 14. If you've ever been to a wedding, you know what table 14 means. It's the table near the kitchen door. The one that wobbles. The one where they put the cousins nobody talks to anymore. The plus ones who don't know anyone, and apparently the mother of the bride. I'm going to back up, because if I just tell you what happened that night, you won't understand why what happened the following Tuesday changed everything. And I need you to understand, my name is Irene. I'm 63 years old. For the last 22 years, I have worked the early shift at a dry cleaning counter on the corner of Birchwood and Fifth in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. I'm there by 6:30 in the morning. I tag garments, run the register, help people find their suits before job interviews and their dresses before funerals. I eat lunch at my desk, usually something I packed the night before, and I'm home by 3. People who see me at work think they know everything about me. They see a woman in a blue smock with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and sensible shoes. They see someone ordinary. Forgettable even. That's fine. I've never needed anyone to see more than that. What almost nobody knows, what I have spent 30 years making sure nobody knows, is that I own that dry cleaning shop and the building it sits in, and 4 other commercial properties in Franklin County, and a portfolio of index funds and municipal bonds that my late husband Harold started in 1987, and that I have quietly, carefully grown ever since he passed. Harold used to say, "The best kind of money is the kind that doesn't make noise." He was right. He was right about almost everything. We raised our daughter Melissa in a 3-bedroom house on Clover Street. Nothing fancy. Good neighborhood, good schools, a yard big enough for a dog. Harold passed when Melissa was 16, and I kept everything the same as it had always been. Because she was grieving, and I was grieving, and the last thing either of us needed was disruption. I kept working the counter. I kept driving the same Buick. I kept shopping at the same grocery store and clipping coupons on Sunday mornings the way I always had. Melissa grew up, went to college, became an event coordinator. She's good at her job, she has an eye for details, and a talent for making things look more expensive than they are. I was proud of her. I am still proud of her, even now. That part hasn't changed. What changed was Griffin. She met him 3 years ago at a work conference in Chicago. He's in commercial real estate. Tall, handsome, the kind of man who uses the word portfolio in casual conversation and expects people to be impressed. His family is from Westerville. Old money, or at least old enough that they've forgotten how new it actually was. His mother, Diane, collects vintage jewelry and mentions her lake house in Michigan roughly once every 15 minutes. I tried to like Griffin. I genuinely did. He wasn't unkind to me exactly. He was just distant. Polite the way you're polite to someone you've decided doesn't matter. He called me Irene from the very beginning, never Mom, or even Mrs. Calloway, which I noticed but chose not to make an issue of. The engagement happened fast. Melissa called me on a Tuesday night, crying happy tears, and I cried with her. Whatever my reservations about Griffin, she loved him, and I wasn't going to put a shadow on that. The wedding planning is where things started to unravel. Diane inserted herself immediately and completely. She had opinions about the venue, the florist, the caterer, the invitation font. She flew in from Westerville twice to do tastings. She started a group text that included Melissa, herself, her 2 daughters, and notably not me. I found out about decisions after they were made. The centerpiece flowers. The menu. The seating chart. The seating chart. The seating chart. I didn't find out I'd been placed at table 14 until the night of the rehearsal dinner, when Melissa showed me a printed copy. I looked at it for a moment without saying anything. My daughter watched my face. "It's just how the tables worked out, Mom," she said. "Diane's side has a lot of family, and they all wanted to sit together near the front, and it made sense to put you closer to the back where it's a little quieter." "Quieter," I said. "You always say you hate loud. Melissa." She stopped. "I'm your mother," I said. "I raised you by myself for 7 years. I worked every day so you could go to college without loans. I sat in the front row at every recital and every graduation." I paused. "And I'm at table 14. She looked down at the tablecloth. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'll talk to Griffin." She didn't talk to Griffin. Or if she did, nothing changed. The wedding was on a Saturday in June. The venue was a renovated barn outside Dublin. Genuinely beautiful. I'll give Diane that. String lights everywhere. Peonies on every table. The kind of soft, golden light that makes everyone look like they're in a movie. I wore the navy dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. I'd had it tailored. I'd gotten my hair done. I drove 45 minutes with a card in my purse that contained, among other things, a cashier's check I'd been thinking about for months. I found table 14. I sat down. I introduced myself to the other people at the table. 2 of Griffin's college friends who didn't know anyone, and a great aunt of his from Dayton who was hard of hearing and mostly wanted to talk about her rose garden. I watched my daughter get married from 200 feet away. I watched Diane straighten Griffin's boutonniere before he walked down the aisle. I watched her dab her eyes during the vows. I watched her stand in the receiving line, shaking hands and accepting congratulations, like she was the mother of both of them. I was not in the receiving line. I stayed through dinner because I am not the kind of person who makes a scene. I ate the salmon. I drank 1 glass of champagne. I clapped when they had their first dance. I went to find Melissa to give her the card, and she was surrounded by Griffin's sisters and cousins, laughing at something someone had said, and she looked up at me briefly and smiled, and then turned back to the conversation. I put the card back in my purse. I found my coat. I told the great aunt from Dayton that it was lovely to meet her, and I walked out to the parking lot at 10:10, got into my Buick, and drove home. I did not cry on the drive home. I made a decision instead. The following Tuesday, I called my attorney. His name is Robert, and he has handled my affairs for 19 years. He is not the kind of attorney who keeps you on hold. When I told him what I needed, there was a brief pause on the line, and then he said, "Are you sure?" "I've had 3 days to think about it," I said. "I'm sure." "Okay," he said. "I'll need about a week to draft everything properly." "Take the time you need," I said. "Do it right." I want to be clear about something because I think it matters. I was not acting out of spite. I know how that sounds, and I understand if you don't believe me. But what happened at the wedding wasn't just about hurt feelings. It was information. It told me something about who my daughter had become, or maybe who she'd always been, and I hadn't wanted to see. It told me something about what she valued and who she'd chosen to stand beside her when it counted. She'd chosen Diane. She'd chosen the lake house in Michigan and the vintage jewelry and the table near the front. She'd chosen to look a certain way in front of a certain kind of people, and she'd put me near the kitchen door. I needed to know if there was a version of Melissa who would have done differently if she'd known. That question kept me up at night more than the anger did. Because here's the thing about money. The thing Harold taught me and the thing I spent 30 years proving to myself, it changes how people see you. And I never wanted to be seen differently. I wanted to be loved as exactly what I appeared to be. A woman in a blue smock who packs her own lunch and drives a Buick and shows up. I wanted Melissa to love that woman. I was no longer sure she did. Robert called me the following Thursday. The paperwork was ready. I went to his office on my lunch break, sat across from his desk, and signed several documents that I had thought about very carefully. The estate plan had always included Melissa as the primary beneficiary. Everything, the properties, the investments, the accounts, would have gone to her. We were talking about a number north of $4 million. I had never told her this number. I had never told her any number. I kept waiting for the right time, the right moment, the conversation that would happen naturally when she was settled and mature, and we were close enough that money wouldn't change things between us. I removed her as primary beneficiary. In her place, I established a charitable remainder trust split between two organizations, the Franklin County Scholarship Fund, which helps first-generation college students, and the animal rescue organization where Harold and I adopted our dog Biscuit back in 2001. Biscuit has been gone for years, but I've never forgotten how they treated us that day. Like our little family mattered. I kept a provision in the documents. A door left open. If Melissa came to me, genuinely came to me, not because she found out, not because someone told her, but because she chose to, then we could talk. Then things could change. I wasn't closing her out forever. I was waiting to see if she'd find her way back on her own. Robert looked at me over his glasses when I was done signing. "This could be hard," he said. "I know," I said. "She may not find out for a long time." "I know that too." He nodded slowly. "You want me to hold on to everything as is until further notice?" "Yes," I said. "And Robert, I need to add one more thing." The one more thing was the building. The dry cleaning shop where I work. The one where Melissa grew up coming to visit me after school, where she did homework at the back counter, where she once spilled an entire can of Sprite on a customer's wedding dress, and we spent an hour fixing it together, laughing until we couldn't breathe. That building had always been earmarked for her, too. In a separate document I'd written years ago, I'd noted my intention to transfer it to her when I retired. It wasn't in the official estate plan, just in a letter of intent I kept in my files. I asked Robert to destroy that letter. He did. I drove back to work. I tagged 17 garments. I helped a man find his tuxedo in time for a work dinner. I ate the sandwich I'd packed. I went home. 3 weeks passed. Melissa called twice, once to thank me for coming to the wedding, a call that lasted 4 minutes and felt like a formality, and once to ask if I still had her old roommate's number for some reason I've already forgotten. We did not talk about Table 14. We did not talk about the receiving line or the card I'd taken home or what I'd felt watching her get married from the back of the room. I did not bring it up. I was waiting. The fourth week, something happened that I hadn't planned for. Griffin's company, the commercial real estate firm, was apparently having some legal difficulties. I found this out not from Melissa, but from my neighbor Pauline, who volunteers at the county courthouse and has always had an ear for these things. There was something about a property disclosure issue on a development deal in Gahanna. Civil matter, nothing criminal, but the kind of thing that creates instability. Financing dries up. Partners get nervous. I did not orchestrate this. I want to be very clear. I did not make calls or pull strings or do anything to bring this about. It was already happening. I only know about it because Pauline mentioned it over the fence one morning while I was getting my mail. But I will tell you what I did when I heard. I felt something shift in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly. Recognition, maybe. The world continuing to be exactly what it is. 2 weeks after that, Melissa called on a Sunday evening. Not a 4-minute call. She asked if she could come over. She arrived an hour later. She looked tired. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd sat the morning after the wedding, in front of a cup of coffee that went cold. And she folded her hands in front of her like she used to do when she was a little girl, and she knew she'd done something she needed to own. "I handled the seating badly," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. "You did." She was quiet for a moment. Diane had a spreadsheet. She had everyone mapped out, and I kept meaning to go back and move some things around, and then the week got crazy, and then it was too late, and She stopped herself. "I'm not making excuses." "Okay," I said. "I saw your face at the rehearsal dinner," she said. "When you looked at the chart, and I didn't fix it, and I should have, and the truth is I think I was scared of Diane, and I let that be more important than it should have been." She looked up at me. "I'm sorry, Mom." Not the kind of sorry that moves on. The kind that knows it was wrong. I looked at her for a long time. She didn't know about the attorney. She didn't know about the trust, or the building, or anything I'd done that Tuesday. She was sitting at my kitchen table because she'd thought about it, and she was ashamed of herself. And she'd gotten in the car and driven over without knowing any of the rest of it. That mattered to me. That mattered more than I can explain. "I brought something back," I said. I went to my bedroom closet, and I took out the card I'd brought to the wedding, the one I'd put back in my purse. The white envelope with her name on it in my handwriting. I put it on the table in front of her. She looked at it. "Is this from the wedding?" "I was going to give it to you that night," I said. I didn't. She opened it slowly. She read the card first. It was nothing fancy, just something I'd found at the drugstore with flowers on the front. Then she unfolded the paper inside. It was a statement of account from the property management company that handles 3 of my buildings. Her name was not on it. My name was. I printed it specifically to show her what existed, what had been quietly accumulating while she was growing up and while she was in college and while she was building her life, without any of it making noise. The number at the bottom was the net equity across those 3 properties alone. She read it twice. She looked up at me. "Mom." "There's more," I said, "but that's enough for now." She sat back in her chair. I watched her face go through several things at once. Surprise, confusion, and then this is the part I'd been waiting to see. Not excitement, not calculation, not the look I'd feared. the look that would have told me everything I didn't want to know. What came across her face was grief. "You've been," she started. "All this time you've been working the counter," I said. "Yes." "And you never told me?" "No." She pressed her fingers to her mouth. "I put you at table 14. "You did, Mom." Her voice broke. "I didn't know, but I should have. It shouldn't matter whether I knew or not. You're my mother. I put my mother at table 14. She cried. I let her cry because she'd earned it, because this was the right response, and I needed to see it, and because I was, in truth, a little bit on the edge of it myself. After a while, she got up and hugged me. She held on longer than she has in years. I called Robert on Monday morning. I told him I needed to revisit the documents. I told him to put Melissa back. Not all the way. I'd keep the scholarship fund as a co-beneficiary, because Harold would have wanted that, and because I believe in it. But I put her back where she belonged. I told Robert about the letter of intent for the building too, to write a new one. There were conditions. Nothing punitive. Nothing designed to control her. Just this. We talk. Honestly. About money. About what she values. She meets with Robert once a year so she understands what exists and what it means and how to take care of it. And she never, not ever, lets someone else decide where her mother sits. She agreed to all of it without hesitating. The last thing I'll tell you is about the cashier's check, the one that had been in the wedding card. I hadn't cashed it, obviously. It was a gift from me to her, and I'd taken it home with me. The morning after Melissa came over, I went back to Robert's office and I handed it to him with a new instruction. It was a check for $25,000. I had intended it as a wedding gift, a down payment help, a start, something to give them a solid foundation. I told Robert to send it to the scholarship fund instead, in Harold's name. Not to punish her. We were past punishment. She and I were past a lot of things. I did it because Harold would have liked that. Because he always said money ought to do something good in the world before it does something good for you. Because sometimes the best thing a gift can be is one that goes further than you planned. Melissa is coming for dinner on Friday. She's bringing Griffin. I am making the pot roast. I've made every winter since before she was born, the one that takes 4 hours and makes the whole house smell like something worth coming home to. Table 14, I've decided, is where you put people you don't know what to do with. I know what to do with my daughter. She sits across from me, close enough to pass the salt, close enough to talk. Close enough that when I look up from my plate, I can see her face. That's the only table that ever mattered. And if Griffin calls me Irene again, well, Robert is just a phone call away. I've thought a lot about what table 14 actually costs me, not emotionally. I mean, in real terms, the kind you can measure. It cost Melissa $4 million for about 6 weeks. It cost Griffin's family whatever goodwill I might have extended in a harder moment. It cost all of us the version of that wedding we could have had, the one where I was in the photographs near the front, the one where I cried in the right way at the right time and nobody had to apologize for anything afterward. That's a heavy price for a seating chart. But here's what I've come to understand. Sitting with this long enough to see it clearly, the seating chart wasn't the problem. It was the answer. It answered a question I'd been afraid to ask for years. Does my daughter see me? Not my money. Not my usefulness. not what I represent at a party. Me, the woman who packed her lunch every day and showed up and never asked for a thing in return. The answer that night was no, or not enough, or not when it was inconvenient. And that's not a moral failing you can fix with an apology. It's a pattern. Patterns take time to build and they take time to dismantle, and the only thing that actually dismantles them is consequence, not punishment. I want to be careful about that distinction, because I did not set out to punish Melissa. I set out to stop pretending the pattern wasn't there. When I called Robert that Tuesday morning, I was doing the most honest thing I'd done in years. I was finally saying, this is what I see, and I am going to respond to it like it's real. What came back surprised me. Melissa showed up on her own. She sat at my kitchen table with her hands folded, like she used to when she was 8 years old. And she'd broken something and knew she had to own it. She didn't know about Robert. She didn't know about any of it. She came because something in her knew it was wrong, and she couldn't outrun that. That told me everything I needed to know. There's a kind of intelligence that has nothing to do with degrees or career success, or knowing which fork to use at the kind of dinner Diane would host. It's the intelligence of looking at yourself without flinching, of sitting with the discomfort of your own choices long enough to understand what they cost someone else. Melissa has that. She'd let it get buried under the noise of trying to belong somewhere new, but it was still there. It came back. And the resilience, hers and mine both, wasn't in the dramatic moments. It wasn't in me signing the documents, or her driving over that Sunday evening. It was in the smaller things. Her saying, I'm not making excuses, and then actually not making excuses. Me opening the door when she knocked. Both of us choosing the harder, truer version of this relationship over the easier, quieter distance that would have settled in if we'd let it. I think about Harold sometimes when I think about all of this. He used to say that the people worth keeping in your life are the ones who find their way back, not the ones who never leave. Everybody leaves in small ways, all the time. The ones worth keeping are the ones who notice they've gone and turn around. Melissa turned around. I'll take that. I'll take that every time.